Hello and welcome to the Quackcast. This is the Drunkduck Quackcast. I'm Ozone Ocean and with me is Baines and Dancery.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi guys, welcome to the Quackcast. Alright, so this week we're doing the Quackcast. Alright, so we'll start on the music now. Welcome to the Drunkduck Quackcast. This is the sexelant Quackcast today because we're up to number 669, which is the sexiest number in the world. It's not really, 69 is the sexy number, and 669 is like the extra sexiest. I don't know. It's a good excuse to do a sexy theme because people always love those, and yeah, 669 is a sexy number.
Oh, yes.
Nice.
Yes,
Interesting.
We're going to talk about different aspects of sexiness in webcomics, but before we go to that, I have to bring up the featured comic. And the featured comic this week, let's see, what was the featured comic? I featured a webcomic this week, and it's not a sexy webcomic at all. It's a horror webcomic, and it's Carl and the Lost Shadow. I'm going to tell you about that now. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Carl and the Lost Shadow. Carl is all alone in the world, till one day he isn't anymore. Suddenly he has a shadow accompanying him, someone to talk to in this big, lonely, friendless world. Times have been very hard for Carl. He's jobless, homeless, and living out of his car. The world is full of enemies, and everywhere he turns there's another burned bridge. But Mr. Shadow is interested in him. The Shadow is a friend. It's just a pity that people are starting to die. But then they were mean to Carl, so maybe it's not such a pity. This is a horror comic about madness. The art is all black and white with a lovely retro, sketchy feel. It's very professional in its look. It looks like something you'd see in just a professional comic, like it's an indie comic, something like that, or even something that's produced by, even Marvel and DC. It's fantastic looking work, and yeah, very, very dark themes. It seems kind of light and slice of life, but there's a real heavy dark underbelly to this. So just accept that Carl seems like a friendly point of view character talking to this strange shadow person, but you'll soon realize that he's not at all, and there are some very dark underpinnings to Carl. Okay, so I hope you enjoy Carl and the Lost Shadow. This is a comic by Jazzy, and it's rated E for everyone. And that was Carl and the Lost Shadow. Okay, so after that, we have to introduce the featured music. Gumwalls didn't send us a theme this week again, so he's been really busy. So I'm going to have to give you a special one. I don't even know what that is, so when I edit it, I'm going to put that in. It's going to be a surprise to me as well. So take it away, Ozone Ocean, and tell us about the featured music. Is this a theme for a comic? No! It could be a theme for the comic called X Up. It does have some wah-wah guitar, the sexiest guitar, after all, but it isn't. This is a theme for the number 6, which in the New Zealand accent, which is the Gumwalls accent, is sex. Interesting fact there. It's a theme for the number 6 because it's the number that a certain user, Playmire, uses when he rates comics that he thinks they deserve it, i.e. a 6 out of 5. This is a theme for that concept, the concept of a supportive dear to Playmire, and to every 6 he has handed out. Okay, so it really is the theme to X Up, but don't tell anyone. The theme to a very, very sexy comic. Anyway, take it away, Gumballs, with your theme to X Up. was the surprise featured music. I hope you enjoyed it. All right, so now we're going to talk about the sexy number of 669. Oh my god, it's so hot. I can't even cope. It's driving me
See,
The
it's
more I
insane.
hear the number, the less sexy it gets.
What do you mean?
I think
669.
Mm,
I just feel like
okay.
nauseated a little bit.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like
69.
sweat and body odor is starting to come.
Well, there you are. That's the real impression of the thing. Actually, funny enough, 69s are really not very sexy. Well, let's not talk about that. But yeah, they're awkward. That's as much as we need to say. Okay, so yes, sexiness in webcomics, which is quite a different thing from that in real life, isn't it? Because you're just depicting something and you're trying to create the impression in someone's mind in order to stimulate well, not necessarily stimulate, but just excite that part of the brain in order to make them pay attention and think, ooh, geez, I wonder what happens next. I want to see more of this. So that's how it works. So it's kind of bypassing physical stuff and going straight to the head. It's a very intellectual way of doing sexiness. And well, I mean, we don't have to talk about all the nitty gritty. Let's just talk about the drawing of sexy characters. It can be quite tricky to do, can't it? I mean, it's a bit of a challenge. I always love it. It's a lot of fun. Now, you don't have to be like incredibly visually accurate to draw someone who's sexy. So this is one of the misconceptions that people often have, that you have to go, oh yeah, I have to like trace from a porn comic. I have to trace from a porn image in order to do a sexy thing. I have to do that. That's what's needed. But of course, nothing could be further from the truth. You could do sexy characters that are just like lines, and that's all. They can be incredibly simple and abstract and still be incredibly sexy. Like Baines, your thumbnails that you do, you manage to make them very sexy just from the way you've got them positioned and drawn, because you're communicating what the kind of thing through your abstract imagery, and it just works so well. Don't you agree?
Oh, okay. So for the Key of Dreams comic we're doing, you mean?
Yeah, and Bottomless Waitress.
Or yeah, of course, Bottomless Waitress. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, it's. I mean, we've talked about it before. How we just humans pick out a face from the most simple and almost abstract thing. We can turn it into a face. It's not exactly the same thing, probably, but like sort of simple cues suggest real life things and sexy things, and definitely like as a like I know that works in simple artwork for me as a reader. Like I notice like oh that's sexy, even if it's like not in a particularly realistic style or whatever. So yeah, so definitely yeah, just knowing that as a reader, how I react to it, I guess translates to those thumbnails.
Exactly, just the curve of the body, curve of boobs, all that kind of thing. They just add that friction, that feeling to it, and that's as much as you need. You don't have to be like spot on, and like a lot of people will automatically complain about proportions and anatomy. You have to get your anatomy right, and that's like a that's it's I mean, it's good to get anatomy right, but it's not necessary in artwork to communicate what you mean. Like, it's good to
I
have
should
an
say I've
anatomy.
never heard that. I've never heard that complaint on my stuff. I'm so far from good anatomy drawing. People don't even bring it up.
Or maybe
It's
appropriate.
It is a rhetorical point that people make.
Yeah.
Like
And
it's
now
not.
I had to.
It doesn't have
Sorry, go
real
on.
meaning. It's just used as a rhetorical thing. It's like there's a crappy joke that you see in a lot of English sitcoms and stuff like that, or not just like English comedy stuff. Whenever someone does an accent, people go, "Oh, that's the worst accent I've ever heard. Oh, you're so racist for doing that accent." Like it's just someone could be doing the best accent, whatever, but this is just rhetorical humor they're using, which is like moronic. It's the worst kind of humor, worst kind of comment you could make, because it involves no thought and it doesn't apply to the actual thing. And that's the same kind of way this anatomy complains. Yeah, maybe the anatomy is not right, but just fuck off. Anyway, sorry, Tarts, go on.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I wanted just to point out that sexy is in the eye of the beholder on so many occasions. But there is also a short code that, telegraphs sexiness. And in that way, even a thin trail of smoke can be sexy if it curls in just the right ways, which is a trick that has been done many times, especially in animation. Even in Aladdin, that is not supposed to be sexy, you have that sexy smoke thing going up,
Right.
I think it is in the opening titles or opening credits or in the closing credit, somewhere there. I mean,
Yeah.
the original, I mean, the animation. Um,
Oh yeah,
and Jasmine in the red thing when she tries to seduce Jafar is one of the sexiest Disney cartoons I have seen. So
yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah, it's just simple, and suggesting stuff can work just as well as actually showing stuff. So
or even better, there is um, this general consensus, I would say, or at least it existed, that one of the sexiest scenes in classic old timey cinema was Ava Gardner just dancing and very sexily taking off her white glove. I don't remember in which movie it was, but there is this very iconic scene where she is dancing fully clothed, doesn't really do much, and supposedly it is a striptease, but the only thing that she takes off is her glove, and it is like let's just say that she made a lot of guys happy privately just with that glove. So
that's not the
there.
best phrasing, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Phrasing.
uh, she got a lot of standing ovations.
Oh my
Right.
god. Oh jeez. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Precisely. Um. Indeed. Yeah. So you can be very subtle and just suggest stuff and stuff like that, and connect directly with the mind if you can, because a lot of the time the artwork is the art of seduction, really, isn't it? In so many different ways. And if you can lead someone to the finish line, well, I mean to the destination, you can lead someone to the destination in the correct way. That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, but all approaches are valid. You can be as explicit as you want, and get them there that way as well. That's fine. It's just that we're saying there, that's not the only way. That's the obvious way, but it's not the only way.
And it might not be the way if you don't do it right. Like you could have super explicit, full frontal nudity for everyone, and it can just not be sexy.
Oh, of course.
So, or it can be super sexy and irresistible. I mean, it depends. It really is on how you set it up, really.
Yes.
More than what they are wearing or how they look.
So that's true. I mean, like there's the, like you say, the wearing and what they look, but the situation itself can be an incredibly sexy situation, regardless, yes, of what people are wearing or how they look. It's just the way you set it up. It's like, say, old-timey porn. Old-timey porn was, I mean, say, like, we're talking about, like, the golden, what's known as the golden age of porn, from the 1970s to the early 80s. And in this period, the actors were mostly treated like real actors back then. So these people weren't just doing porn, they were actually sort of treated as like normal actors would be, in that they had to act. They had scripts. People, they had like all sorts of, they had all, massive crews on these sets, and these were big budget productions. And the sexiness wasn't just people having sex like it is in modern stuff. It was like there was a whole involved story, and that still exists today. There's still people who do that kind of thing, but that's back then. That was the only thing that was being done. That was the mainstream of this particular stuff. And what would happen is, like it wouldn't just be the sex. We would lead up into it, and with these very sexy scenarios, not just, oh, you've ordered a pizza with extra sausage. That kind of stuff. It was a way more advanced than that, and it was quite elaborate and interesting, and that really did set the scene and work. And you can still find some of these things online today. It's they're really interesting. People will tend to kind of fast forward to the sexy moments, but that's not necessarily what you need to do. So yeah, setting things up can make them very sexy. I think that's the art of what we do in Bottomless Waitress, in that, of course, we rarely have any actual like consummation of anything, but we have sexy situations. Like one of the sexiest ones was the one, Tance, you illustrated, when we had the
Polly in the shower.
Yes, Polly in the changing, and using Craig as a like a coat hanger.
Yeah.
Stuff. And he was sweating and told not to turn around while she was naked behind him, putting clothes on top of him. And I would never have thought to have drawn it that way, but you'd done it perfectly. So
Thank you.
Well, glad to have that. Yeah. So you knew what you were doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that everyone, and I mean everyone, has their own flavor of sexy. Like if they want to be sexy, they can be. And if they, and this is of course a very broad statement, because you need to have, I would say, a minimum level of confidence, self-confidence and situational confidence, and also a control over your inhibitions, so that you can lower them and let yourself be sexy, or do sexy things, or draw sexy things. Because I assure you, there was a time that I couldn't actually even draw like a nipple or anything like that.
Goodness me.
Yeah, because I felt like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, is anyone seeing, over my shoulder or something? Obviously not anymore. Even though I very rarely draw nipples, I don't mind drawing them. Yeah, and I remember there was I have this thing where if I have a problem with something, I feel that I am not very. It doesn't come easy to me to do certain things, and sexiness was never like my strong suit. I tried to sort of careen headlong into it. So there was this one time, way back when where I told myself, you are going to do a sexy comic. Just to force yourself to draw people being sexy and doing sexy things. And I chickened out eventually, but I set it all up, and I even collaborated with another artist. I don't know if you remember her. Her name was her handle was Pink Diapers. She had a very distinct style of drawing, and she collaborated with me to do all this setup and preparation, and I had written the script, which for me was wow. I wrote this super sexy script of this post-apocalyptic dystopian 1984-ish society that revolves around breeding and sex and stuff like that, and how the characters break away from it to find actual love and connection, and not just be, cattle. So that was the theme. And then she disappeared. So
damn it.
I hope she's well wherever she is. She was a lovely lady. So
the world lost something special that day.
Yeah. But anyway, that was basically how I broke into being comfortable with including sexy themes when necessary.
Okay, so you took a plunge into the deep end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You skinny dipped.
I don't know if I skinny dipped. I was not that old. But and I actually taught myself to draw people naked, just not being sexy, just naked people to be accustomed to it. So that's how I schooled myself to be okay with it. Yeah.
Bones,
very nice.
have you had any experience?
I've almost never drawn naked bodies. Like if there's nakedness, it's mostly hidden. It's like sort of for comedy or for a teasing effect, like the kind of thing Oz draws in Bottomless Waitress. As far as subject matter, actually, Bottomless Waitress was probably a big moment to actually have something publicly, like to write the scene where two characters actually get together.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty major. I'm pretty sure I've never done that in a comic or anything before. That was. I remember thinking,
chicka wow moment.
Yeah, it's like, is this gonna be okay? Just me internally, just like, oh boy.
Yeah. I know the feeling. Yeah. I know the feeling. Like even as the page is being uploaded, you are second guessing yourself. Like, is this okay? What is happening?
Yes, and even the suggestive stuff in Typical Strange, I knew I wanted it to be there, but the first time uploading pages, it's like, oh, is it going to come off creepy? Is it, like,
does it divert too much from your main kind of thing? That's what I worry about when I go in Pinky TA.
Speaking of, I think you laugh, and I think those comments still exist. When I first started Without Moonlight, and it had, your first Nazis strutting around and, in uniform and all of that, and the first SS, I had a couple of people commenting, really the unsettling comments, that they found all of that sexy.
Ew.
And I felt like I was doing something wrong. Like, why is this? What? Why? And I felt very weirded out when I read those comments. And fortunately, those people stopped commenting. I think they were hoping that there would be something sexy in the comic.
Well, that comes from, I think there is a like, what would you call it, like a subculture, I think, and that's typified by some particular like bits of media, like I think Ilsa She-Wolf, I think that's the name of it, Ilsa the She-Wolf of the Nazis, and there's a few films based on that, and it's about, you know, like sexy Nazi women and, you know, like sadomasochism and that kind of stuff. So it comes from a sadomasochistic, bondage and discipline sort of a theme. So it's not necessarily about like Nazism. It's just about the imagery of, you know, bondage and discipline and all that kind of stuff, and it like uses that as its you know, just as its visual shortcuts, and it borrows from it. So I think that's why people comment that stuff with Nazis in is sexy, because they're part of that mindset. So they're not thinking like, oh my god, Nazism, like brutalization of humanity and invasion and killing Jews is sexy. It's, there's a few steps in between.
Yeah, I saw that movie and I thought it would be like what you're saying, like it would be sexy and kind of, you know, it's got a Nazi thing, but I thought it would be more fantastical, like it's kind of using that, and it was going to be sort of a fun little sexy thing. It is not at all. She's a beautiful woman, but that's it. It's very disturbing. It's that movie is not a pleasant time.
She-Wolf. I can't remember the exact title, and there are a lot in that that style. I think there might be sequels to it, but there are others in that.
I think so, yeah. I've seen one of them anyway. I think the first one.
They're actually more related to the women in prison genre. I think that's where it comes from, and it just
makes sense.
Which was a big thing in the 1970s and the 60s. Actually, started in the 1960s, I think, and had its heyday in the 70s. And really died out. Didn't go into
there are a lot of those, I think. Right, I've never seen one, but
it's not my cup of tea.
It's
just it's not my thing. I mean, not that it's like obviously like aspects of sadomasochistic imagery or bondage and discipline imagery can always be like sexy if it's done in the right way, but you have to be part of that lifestyle to really, you know, find the whole thing like really sexy, because it goes further than just imagery.
Right, yeah. I don't know. I mean, there are certain things that even if I was even if I had an inclination, like if it is something turned me on, if it had a swastika on it, I wouldn't be turned on. I don't know. Like there are certain things that I know are more appealing to me sexually. But if you take these things that are generally, I mean, more or less a guarantee that I will at least be interested. If it has a swastika on it, it's like an immediate
a turn off.
Yes, thank you. Exactly. It's like, oh no, bye. Thank you.
Oh no. Oh no. Yeah. I think that was a thing back in the 60s and 70s. That was people were removed enough from it because this was something their parents dealt with, and these were kids who had no direct experience with this for the most part. So part of the counterculture then too in the 60s. So people were questioning what their parents had, you know, experienced and believed in and stuff like this. So that's why it became like as part of the pop culture. Now we've sort of come around again and we sort of see these things in their historical context. But back then it was a different time. There was different things politically and culturally happening. So it wasn't that, people were going, haha, narcissism is sexy. It was
Yeah,
more
no,
like,
I know that.
yeah.
I know that.
But I mean,
And
to
and then
communicate with our viewers, our few
yeah.
listeners.
But yeah, suffice to say that the one sex panel, because it's not really a scene, that exists in Without Moonlight, was put off for a very long while because I was so afraid that I would get comments like this. So yeah, that was the
Yeah,
thing.
that's interesting. Yeah, because like sex is something that humans do, and it's part of stories, and it's part of communication, stuff like that. So it would be like a criminal, or not to be able to do that, not to be able to include that, just because of people's weirdness. But I
Yeah.
think generally people are mature enough in
Yeah.
order to understand things, in their proper meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And your comic is obviously not there to be a to turn people on. That's not the point of Without
No,
Moonlight at
that's
all.
yeah, that's not the point.
Well,
So
actually, speaking of that, say in Pinky TA, like she's dressed in a very sexy way, like with these bottomless
Mhm.
kind of chaps with her army trousers. I'm wearing a G-string all the time and a halter top. And the reason for that was because it was originally inspired by anime and manga from the 90s. So I was going for that cyberpunk look that has a lot of flesh showing, like Ghost in the Shell, or excellent animation by what was that thing? Eon Flux, stuff like that. It was really
yeah,
sexy.
yeah.
1990s club wear, Tank Girl, all that kind of stuff. And so I wasn't thinking about the character sexually. I was just thinking about these cool imagery. I wanted to do something myself with cool imagery. And back then in anime and manga, you had like sexy women fighting enormous machines and stuff. So that's what I wanted to do. So it came out of that. Skip to the 2000s when I've got this comic done. People always would look at it and go, oh my god, why is she so sexy? Is she a prostitute? Is she this and she that? Like, they're coming at it with these preconceived ideas about women. Well, a woman dressed sexually, so she must be something to do with sex. Whereas for me, it had nothing to do with that. It was just visual imagery. It was just something that I like to draw and I like to see, but it didn't have any meaning sexually, which is
yeah.
And I couldn't understand why someone would think that it had a sexual meaning to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know what you mean. Oh.
But yeah, there's that weirdness, and then we got bottomless waiters where people are dressed sexually because, like, I don't know, in this world of bottomless waiters, it's like a gimmick. It's trying to get people into the diner and pay more money than you'd normally pay at a diner. So that's why they're doing it. Like, your coffees
Maybe it's never occurred to them to do that.
But that would probably be the reason why they do it, like $20 coffees or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, or a cover charge or something like that.
Yeah.
So there is a purpose to the sexiness of their outfits.
Yeah, and they get extra tips. So
yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's banned. You're not allowed to do that.
oh, okay, even better.
No, it's a joke. It's a joke, Tans. Keep your tips covered. Yes, they would make a lot of money from tips. Yes. But yeah, there's a purpose to their sexualities, but it's not really. Again, that's not really part of the whole thing in the comic. We don't show these women bottomless having sex with patrons or anything like that, or getting involved in any way sexually with anyone except their partners, pretty much. That's fair to say, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. There's a whole. Anyway, we mentioned this funny thing when we were doing our little video, saying like, if we were ever to depict sex in a real way, people wouldn't like to see it because actual sex is very different from the kind of stuff you portray visually, even in porn. Like, there's the stinkiness, the sweat,
Mhm.
the uncomfortableness, the embarrassment,
The crying.
The crack.
Is that just me? I'm sorry.
uh, the bodily fluids, the mess, the all that horrible stuff. If we were actually to depict what sexual encounters are really like in comics, no one would ever want to see it. It'd just be horrible. So yeah, that's one of the things. It's all sexuality that's depicted is always a fantasy, and it has to be, because the reality
Right.
is way more awkward and frustrating.
And there's also, like, if we want to take it a little further, there have been many studies, and consistent enough, that definitely say that there is a huge discrepancy between porn and say, like intercourse, natural intercourse between people, real intercourse, and if people are like consume porn too much, the natural, normal, real, and when I say normal, I mean in real life, intercourse suffers. Uh, and there is a lot of issues. There are a lot of issues and there are a lot of problems. Even if a person realizes that porn is a kind of fiction. So what they see there is not how you should behave, quote unquote,
Right.
in intimacy.
Mm.
So, and that's why the general recommendation is, don't overconsume porn, because it
Right.
teaches you to get stimulated in ways that you will not be stimulated in real life. So,
Yeah.
and that is, and I'm saying this because that's a consistent scientific finding. So,
Yeah,
tip of the
it's
Yeah.
a fantasy,
yeah.
and yeah, you're right. It can distort reality for people because it's not based in reality at all. You know, this is just the way it has to be. It has to be a fantasy. And it's one of the funny things that people don't realize it. They don't understand the fact that it has to be a fantasy, and these things, they can never be real.
Yeah,
In the way you think.
absolutely. And it's funny that you say this, because, and I go again back to that moonlight, because I have basically three intercourses that are happening. And two of them are off screen, and one is almost on screen because you just see their legs. And there is a reason why I did this. I could have drawn like half a page of a loving intimacy between Basil and Martha, and I could have drawn like super sexy. Uh, we affirm each other intimacy with Orestes and Iris, but I didn't do that because it would. I wanted everyone. Oh, sorry.
So Chance has got her alarm going off.
The talk was getting too spicy, and an alarm went off.
Exactly, the heat was just too great.
Yeah.
The sprinklers erupted in a shower of orgasmic liquid everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh dear. But,
well, I do have the same similar thing with my other comics with Kaiju Valentine. Like, there's sort of maybe one scene in there so far that is a little bit on the randy side, and I was wondering what to show and what not to show. And
oh my god, in Kaiju
I
Valentine.
might a lot of that stuff. Yeah. I might leave a lot of that stuff to the imagination. What happens in their private room, but yeah. But Tance is back.
Oh, I need to see all the sexiness in Kaiju Valentine. Well, I mean, like, you have the Patreon version, so that could maybe be. I know, but maybe that could be an encouragement to people to become patrons.
Maybe, yeah.
Like,
I don't know if some people want to see it.
I don't know, but a little less hidden, or a little more explicit, a tiny bit.
Kaiju Nights.
Kaiju Nights, yes. It's just Godzilla in a bloody negligee. Godzilla in a garter belt. Oh my god. Oh, that would just be perfect. I want to see that now. But yeah, so the whole thing about Kaiju Valentine is a comic, for people who don't know, with a gigantic woman called Minnie and her little tiny boyfriend, well, her normal sized boyfriend in our world, but to her tiny, called Max. And you've got the joke in the names Minnie and Max.
Yeah.
But somehow they get it on, and somehow she finds him totally irresistibly sexy, even though he's as big as her hand. And her hand, ha ha ha. But anyway, Baines never actually shows how they get it on or what happens between them. And this is part of the humor, because it's all left to your dirty, hilarious imagination. Which
yeah, like in a story with a romantic, like good people who have a romance, you just, like, it's sort of always the case that that part of their life is great. It works really well for both of them somehow. But yeah, we don't really. Yeah,
I think, and that's part of the joke, really, isn't it? I mean,
for sure. Yeah.
This weird contrasting couple. How do they ever do anything? And one could argue that to actually show it would sort of take away the joke.
Oh yeah, I mean, it sort of puts things in a different. It just
Or maybe
it might go into a territory I don't want to go into. in terms of genre.
My fondest fantasy with Kaiju Romance is to see Max start punching up people. That's what I see. That's not sexy.
Like beating up the giant dudes, you mean?
Exactly. Oh my god, I want to see that. Just leaping onto one of their faces and just punching their noses. He's riding their face. And then, like, begging for submission.
Yes.
I imagine Max as being a brute, a nuclear weapon.
Right.
I see Baines going, right, okay, sure.
No, I like this.
Contact, back away slowly.
I didn't catch all of that because we had to settle things here. All is okay, but yeah, I laughed as well.
Yeah,
you might. But what was your? You had something going there, Chance, before the alarm went.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, I wanted everyone to that reads it and thinks about it to insert whatever is intimacy of that sort in their minds.
Yes.
Because it
Right.
is very private and personal for everyone. So whatever you think is tender and intimate, or ha ha ha, I'm super sexy and I have this thing going. That's what they did. Whereas with the Nazi and Iris, I wanted to specifically show that this is unsexy sex. It's not
Right.
it's not sexy.
Yeah.
So
So you remove all the suggestiveness and the audience's like mental imagery of the whole thing, and you depict it in the way you want it depicted.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Otherwise, they would have been off camera as well. But no.
Yeah.
They were not being sexy. It was nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was very effective. Very effective scene.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
I don't think I ever did a sex scene in Pinky Tear. I think actually I did, but it was of a dream that Pinky had. So it wasn't a real sex scene. It was just sort of suggested and sort of all blocked out. So, and that was back when I had a different attitude towards it. When I was thinking, yeah, I can depict anything I want, and now I'm more concerned with ratings and audiences and all that kind of stuff. So I'm more careful. Which is that's the biggest issue above anything else, I think, with sexiness in like anything. It's restricting your audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really easy to restrict your audience these days. I mean, you don't need to be super explicit, I guess, to get a higher rating than warranted. I mean, in corporate media anyway, not here in the Duck.
The Duck's fairly open in that you can show nudity and implied sex within a mature rating, which can be fairly, well seen by people. But an adult rating means you're showing explicit sex and all aspects of that. Like, if you want to be nice and explicit, have an adult rating and that will restrict your viewership. So it's a trade-off. People love it, but you'll have less views, less audience. So, I mean, I've done a full-on porn comic before because I think I've talked about this many times. Like, I got paid to do it, so I went for it and did a full-on sexy comic, and it was fun to do, but it was hard and it was difficult because actually drawing people interacting in that way is tricky, and also writing a sexy comic is another challenge again.
Yeah, so you wrote it, you did the whole thing, like
having
someone
a story
commissioned you
to... Exactly, it's a challenging thing to do.
Oh man.
And actually showing people interacting in that kind of way is not easy.
Yeah. It is like it is top tier level in of two characters in contact interacting. So like full contact.
I think I cheated because I was running out of time and I was late with the damn thing, so I actually did trace from porn a bit, and it suffered a lot because of that. It looked really bad. Yeah, it looked way better when I wasn't, when I was just drawing it myself. because for some reason, inaccuracies and mistakes in anatomy, they're fine if it's like drawn by someone. But if you're tracing and you have errors, because like tracing from a photo is a very different thing. You can't get a real kind of looking person by doing that, and those mistakes are way more obvious. It's like the uncanny valley stuff. The more you approach the real thing, the more the mistakes show up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Don't trace your porn.
No, generally, in the whole tracing thing, that's a different topic. But don't trace if you don't know what you are tracing. And what I mean by that is you have to know the rules of anatomy before you trace, so that you can actually be in control of the figure yourself,
Right.
rather than be dependent on whatever is in the photo. So
Exactly.
like, use it as a skeleton, and I say that because I do it sometimes, especially like I take photos of myself, and in very complicated angles or shots and stuff like that, and it might be for a character that has absolutely the exact opposite physique to mine, like super tall, buff, or whatever. I don't know. But it still works because I just use it as like the inner like skeleton sort of part
Just
of
to get the pose correct.
Yes. So just to get the feeling in space, and then you draw. You don't trace, you draw over. Just where the mass, if that makes sense, is in space.
Yeah, very important, and it makes things look so much more real and believable if it has mass to it.
Yeah, exactly. But if you just trace, and I mean that by going by the contours and not knowing what it is that you are tracing, then it will look empty, I think, is the word I would use. Yeah.
Yeah, a big balloon of a person just sort of floating.
Yeah, or it would look like those very old-timey police dead body white chalk lines.
Funny you should say that.
What?
That's exactly how it looks, yeah.
Yeah. Like, this is
description.
where the dead was.
Yeah, excellent. So we've come up to the end, so we should do something to wrap this up. Our open chat about sexy stuff on 669. Most unsexy number in the world.
I think we should thank everyone for listening and promise to call each other. And
oh man, there's so many. All right, like for the last 7 minutes, we can talk about some of the misconceptions about sex that are created by media, and not just porn either. Like standard media. Like there's this whole thing that couples at the finish of sex need to smoke. And that was 100% in all sexual encounters, like from Hollywood at least, is always like the post-coital smoke. Like,
I'm guilty of that as well. I have that.
Yes, but did you know cavemen, they hadn't like discovered tobacco, but they still managed to smoke. Yes.
It's a handy shorthand in like cartoons and stuff and comedies and everything. It's funny that was a very standard approach even in movies at a time.
Yeah, this is weird. What was the other thing? That virgins are always the prize for sex. Like, no, nothing could be. Virgins are horrible at sex. That's a stupid, disgusting thing. And then there's the idea of like another like popping the cherry. Oh my god, I hate that freaking phrase. It's disgusting. Like, oh, I've had my cherry popped. Oh, which is directly related to. So this is for males and females, and it's like if you're doing something for the first time, you use this phraseology, and it's of course based on the myth of like piercing the hymen, and like that's the cherry, which no, the hymen does not cover the vagina. Only if someone does have that, it's possible that's like a
that's a condition.
Yeah, an unfortunate condition, and it can lead to health issues. So it's basically you've just got extra skin down there, and if someone's not properly like excited, foreplay hasn't happened properly, then you can have injuries because people having sex the first time aren't very good at it, and that's what it is. So if someone's bleeding, it's not expected. That's because you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, that's an F.
That should not happen. It's not part of virginity. That's part of bad sex because you're not good at it.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So these are the kind of myths associated with sex that are perpetrated 100% by pop culture and non-sexy pop culture as well. This is like mainstream Hollywood perpetuates this.
Oh, and another one that I have to add, like if you don't have, like if you are like past a certain age and you don't have sex or you haven't had sex, you are some kind of weirdo that is mentally affected by not having sex, and there's something wrong with you.
You're obsessed by it in a weird way, or it metastasizes and you turn into a psychopath.
That's the thing, metastasize. It takes control of you like some kind of virus, and you need to basically do it so that your brain clears, like you have sex fog in the brain because you have never had sex, which is really like it's so stupid.
Yeah, these things are solid parts of pop culture that. Oh my god, now I can tell you've had sex because you're so much, you've got a glow about you, and
or you are grinning, or you are different.
Or this person had so much tension and now they've had sex and so they're way more like easygoing, and it's just, I mean, there can be a certain truth to that in that the person had tension because they didn't connect with someone at an emotional level, and now they had an emotional connection, but people mistake that for just focusing on the sex. So
and it could even just be as mundane. And or you could have the same effect by a good exercise session if you take it down to the physical. Any physical exertion is going to give you this relaxation post-exercise.
That's right.
So,
or they could just be easygoing because they had a good cry. They spoke to their mum, or something as like had a run with their dog. It could be something so banal.
Exactly. There is this glorification of sex as something that is completely necessary for human existence, and I don't mean procreation. I mean like
yes, well, it is.
It is, but that's not what we are talking about. And if you don't have it, you are half a person. You are not complete. You have failed your mission as a person. All of that.
Yes, as referenced in 40-year-old version. which is, I think, is
Exactly. I was thinking of that. Like, oh my God, how dare they not have sex for 40 years? Oh, wow. That sort of thing.
I think part of the story of that was, it's not a big deal. So, yeah, there's that. But we're wrapping up now. Google is going to kick us off. So it's going to spray us with water and say, get out of it, stop doing it, you dirty people. Exactly. You horny
Okay.
sinners. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.